Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to a brand new edition of Geek to Me Radio. Tonight, we have Charles Soule and Ryan Browne joining us to talk about their new comic from Image, The Lucky Devil. We'll be talking with them, and if we have time, we'll play another interview I've got. I'm not going to spoil it yet, though. All that and more, stand by.
We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors from Hogwarts houses, one ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
And if you're driving around the greater St. Louis area tonight listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, hello to all of you tuning in. If you're streaming us out there on YouTube and Facebook, hello to all of you watching. Thank you very much for finding us there. As always, if you're hearing us after the fact in the podcast form, we appreciate you finding us there. Hopefully you've subscribed by now, left us a nice 5-star review. That always helps us out in search engine optimization. We appreciate that very much. Full show tonight, so we're going to go right to my guests. We have Charles Soule and Ryan Browne on talking about their brand new comic, The Lucky Devils. I got to say, gentlemen, they sent me a preview of this. I love it. I can't wait for the actual comic to come out. Thank you both for joining me tonight.
It is our pleasure. I'm speaking for Ryan. Is it your pleasure too, Ryan?
Oh, absolutely. I am more pleased than Charles is even. Look at how happy I am.
Wow. You don't know that. You don't know that. Yeah. I'm pretty pleased. Anyway, thank you so much for having us. We're just, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Of course. And Charles, I met you. You probably don't remember because you saw a lot of people at Terrificon this past August. So I met you very briefly.
What a great show. What a great show Terrificon is. It's a great time. It's in a casino, which is part of what makes it fun.
Right, exactly. And Ryan, I've not had the pleasure to meet you yet, but hopefully that'll happen one of these times. You guys have had such a collaboration on all the other projects you've worked on. I assume at this point, it's just second nature. It's like, hey, why don't we do let's do that. Can you make it look like, yeah, we can do that? Is it just that simple?
Look,
Ryan?
No, I wish it was. It's a lot of searching. It's a lot of going back and forth and pushing it back and forth. Charles coming up with an inkling of an idea, and then me trying to figure out how it should be visualized, and then Charles saying, "Yeah, I see how that works." Now I get more ideas out of that. So we go back and forth and back and forth. It's never easy, but it is very fun and very fulfilling to do.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is really just we know when it's right. We've been working together now for 10 years basically, and we know when it feels correct. And that's the time that we move forward. And if it's not, we just keep working, keep hammering away. But there's fun in that too. It's a collaboration that's one of the best I've had in my entire career for sure.
And with all the stuff that you've done already, you've collaborated on this. Talk a little bit about how the origin for the idea of the Lucky Devils came about.
Right. Well, so one of the things that Ryan and I do is we like to take or tell stories that give us an opportunity to do basically anything we want from a visual perspective in the story, right? Because we make comics, and comics, you want to be able to show anything you can on a page. And Ryan is such an incredible artist that I always want to give him the chance to draw literally anything. His imagination is kind of boundless. He comes up with a lot of wild and crazy ideas, to put it mildly. And so we want to think of premises that give him the chance to do what he does, and then give me the chance to kind of find a way to sort of almost put boundaries around it and ground it in a way that the reader can connect with. Like our last book, 8 Billion Genies, was about everyone on Earth getting a genie and one wish at the same time. Which sounds like a premise that is like, how could you even tell a story within that world? And so my job was to find a way to make a story work within that, which I feel like I did pretty well. But it also gave Ryan the chance to draw literally anything that anyone could ever wish for. And so that's what we always look for in these ideas, is the premise that gives Ryan the chance to draw anything and everything and lets me figure out a way to make something that doesn't make sense make sense. And so the new book was that idea. We decided to start playing with the idea of shoulder devils, right? So, the devil on your shoulder, the person that is tempting you, not the person, the little being that is tempting you to do bad things, even though you know what the right thing is to do. And that's such a potent idea that is in, everybody knows what that means, no matter where they come from in the world. Everybody's dealt with temptation. And so we wanted to do that. And the idea that Ryan would get to draw these little cartoony devils actually messing with people and trying to make them do bad things was really where the idea began. And how has it been to do it, Ryan?
I mean, it's been great. Yeah, it's been great. It is a type of thing where I get to do a lot of acting with my drawing. Like, that's a big part of my job. But not just the character designs, but like physically how people are reacting to one another. And so having these people who are getting messed with by the devil on their shoulder, who they're not aware of. And so, like, devil's tail is wrapped around his, the person's throat, and he's very upset, and the devil's loving it, right? So there's a lot of fun opportunities to act and play within like a very serious, moments. And then, it was kind of like with 8 Billion Genies, where we have a lot of very serious moments and like very high stakes for our characters. But also there were these little genies that were having a great time building this entire, environment and story and problem for everybody. And so we're doing a very similar thing with this, but this one is more about temptation. And we're, instead of with 8 Billion Genies, where every person had a genie, they had one wish, they had one shot at it. This is about characters, and they are having this constant temptation of, how do I work with the devil on my shoulder to get to a better place in life while still being a good person? But it's a ton of fun.
I obviously don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't already read this, but obviously there's the devil, and these are lower level devils. So each one has their own people who we all have our own devils on our shoulders. So the concept itself is very cool, especially when you get to the reveal at the end. And again, I'm trying hard not to spoil this for anybody, because I hate that when, you've already, why should I get the first issue now? I know what's happening. But I do enjoy the concept of they're kind of throwing a little wrench into the works of this thing. You've got kind of two disgruntled devils. It's a fascinating concept.
Can I like throw out because we're talking about this book, but I haven't actually pitched it. We haven't actually told the audience like what this book is. So Ryan and I are comics creators. We've been making comics for many years. We're well known in that field. And this is our new book, our new story. It's going to come out over the course of 9 issues from a company called Image Comics, which we love. It's the best comics publisher in the business for people who come up with their own unique ideas. It's the best place to put stuff in the world. So 9 issues. And the premise is 2 people who live in Chicago, which is where Ryan's from, meet the devils on their shoulder. Like, actually, late one night, they actually meet them. And those devils say, we are sick of trying to corrupt you guys because you're just too good. You're good people. And we can't do it anymore. And we're over it. Like, it's just like trying to run uphill too long. We don't want to do it anymore. So instead, we've come to like you guys. So we're just going to like make your lives better. We have all these like devilish powers. We're going to use them to make your lives great. It's going to be amazing. Everybody's going to be happy. And obviously there's more going on because these are little devils. Okay. In the story, these 2 devils, their names are Caller and Rake. They're essentially the equivalent of like gig workers, basically hell's gig workers. They're very low level. Their jobs are terrible. Their lives are terrible down in hell. They don't like it. So they've come up with this plan to make their lives a lot better, a lot faster. And it begins with the idea of introducing themselves to their humans that they've been working with for a long time, the humans that they've been sitting on the shoulder of for a long time. So it's really about, what if you could actually talk to like your worst impulses? What if you could actually talk to the thing that is making you be tempted to do bad things, which we all know, we all have. We all feel like, that happens to us from time to time. So it's a story that over the course of the 9 issues, it follows both the humans and the devils. as they both try to get what they want. The humans become more influential and powerful in life and try to remain good people, which is not easy to do. Like, if you think about the way powerful people seem to work in the world, like they don't always stay good. You know, like it seems like the world wants powerful people to be bad. At the same time, the devils are trying to improve their lives by, doing a lot of things that we don't want to spoil in the book. But it's really, it's a lot of fun. We're building this whole big new mythology around, hell and good and evil and devils and shoulder devils and what it all means in a way that's going to be familiar to people, but also feel completely fresh. And that's, I think, kind of what Ryan and I do really well.
And Ryan, when you're taking on a project like this one, the Lucky Devils, what's one of the biggest challenges that you as an artist face for this?
It's starting from scratch every time. And I'm a artist. I try to, like, there's a lot of things that I really, really love, storytelling wise, movie wise, comics wise, video games, all that stuff. And like, I try to take all of the things that have influenced me and then filter them through myself, combine them and do new things with them. So I'm inventing something that feels familiar in some ways, but hopefully new, right? So it's not just like, oh, here's another fantasy thing that looks like the other fantasy things. Here's a new sci-fi thing that looks like all the other sci-fi things. It's trying to start from scratch with, all the ideas I have. And especially with this one, it was like, all right, well, I need a devil design that, and since half the book takes place in hell, where everyone is a devil, like there needs to be a style and a logic to their world and what they look like. And so that's all stuff where I'm like, all right, I'll try doing this. And I sketch it out. I'm like, oh, that looks like Hellboy. Like, all right, I can't do that. Like, oh, this looks like, little hot rod devils. Okay, let's go this way, And so it's always like, we did this with 8 Billion Genies, where figuring out the design of the genie was really, really hard. And I was in a very wrong, direction with it for a while, until going back and forth, we figured out like, oh, these weren't going to be genies like you've seen before. These aren't, blue skin, shirtless, strong people, and so with devils is the same thing. It was like, all right, I got to figure out something that's recognizable as being the thing that the devil on your shoulder, but have it not look or feel the way that you are used to, right? And so like originally Charles was saying, like very insect like they're crawling on you, like they're they're maybe like at most they're twice the size of your head. And so like that's the scale that I've gotten. And so then the concept of them like crawling around on you, and then how their world would feel, so like all that early world building stuff is very daunting, and like it seems impossible. And then when we push back and forth and mold it, I mean, it is very much the Marvel block that you have to try and find the statue in.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a great experience, but again, like we've been working on this book for over a year.
Wow.
Because of all of that, like finding it that we've had to do visually and within the story.
What happens when you're making a create your own comic book, if things are going well, and I, again, like the way that Ryan and I work is the definition of it going well, generally speaking, is you start with your friendship, you start with the connection you have with the person you're collaborating with, and you say, what do we want to do? What do we want to do next? What's the thing that would excite us as creative people? And you move forward and you start like adding ideas, and you start thinking about what you want to do, and you start building this thing together. And then the thing starts to move and live on its own. And that's where we are with Lucky Devils, which is great. Because I mean, the book comes out from Image on January 8th. So if we weren't at the point where it was living and moving on its own, we'd be in trouble. But it's, we're well into it at this point, and we know how, because of our years of collaboration, to get to the point where the book starts to have its own life. And these characters, the art that Ryan creates, the things I have the characters say, it's sort of a cliche, but they start to like move and walk and talk on their own. Like they live in their own way. they surprise me all the time. Like I'm working on an issue right now. I'm working on an issue. Don't worry, Ryan, I'm working on a script for you today.
Awesome.
And it becomes a thing where you I didn't see half the stuff coming in this issue I've been writing today. And when I come to the idea, it's like, well, that's the way, that's the only way. And I just didn't see it yet. And that's, it's a wonderful thing about making comics. It's like, the collaboration, the back and forth between the two of us makes these wonderful things that neither one of us could do alone.
If you're just now tuning in, we are talking with Charles Soule and Ryan Browne about their brand new comic coming out. As he just said, right after the first of the year, they're in January. You can catch The Lucky Devils. We're going to take a very brief commercial break. You're okay to stick with me for just a bit longer, gentlemen?
Absolutely, if you'll have us.
Perfect. That's great. It's great. I've got a lot more questions, and I apologize if you're listening right now. Feel free to send us a text. I'm going to try to pay attention to the text line tonight. I'm usually bad at that. You know that, so just keep texting me at the KTRS text lines at 84126, or you can put it in the chats if you're listening on YouTube and Facebook. The chats were malfunctioning the past 2 weeks, but I thought we had it fixed. So if you don't see me answering you, just try it again. Send it through. We'll take this very brief commercial break. We'll come right back, chatting more. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
The most powerful machines on Earth, the Rimfire Cannon.
Bombs away!
And the Zone Rider Cycle. Only their awesome power can defeat the evil Overlord's Bullwhip Cannon.
Have a nice trip!
And monstrous sledgehammer tanks.
Fight the gun!
Each sold separately, new from Congress.
The Saga of Crystar, a fantasy world of crystal warriors, demons, and wizards. Good wizards like Ogioti, evil wizards like Zarda, and underworld demons like Moltar.
They've captured Ogioti!
Each figure with a crystal prism that makes everything look like this.
Goodness and right, evil and might, the winner is out to you.
The Saga of Crystar collection. Each figure sold separately by Remco.
Up and hills, down and dales, as we hit the dusty trail, army ants we go marching along. We are bad, we are boss, we've got guts that swish and squash, army ants we go marching along.
Army ants.
Then it's high, high, he for the...
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Welcome back to the show. Geek to Me Radio, heard here every Sunday night on the Big 550 KTRS. We appreciate all of you listening. The voice of Kevin Conroy bringing us back from commercial break because we want to make sure we tell you about Bugs Comics and Games, our official comic book sponsor. If you're in the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area, maybe you're looking for new comic book stores. I know sometimes they close down, unfortunately. Brick and mortars. Bugs is still going. He just celebrated his 2-year anniversary, and you can go check him out right there on Bryan Road. If you're looking for new comics like the Lucky Devils, you can go ahead and put that on your pull list when you walk in the store. Just tell Larry, hey, I want to make sure I get this. He'll add it to your pull list. And if you're looking to save some money while you're enjoying your hobby, join the Avengers Club. That way you start saving money on your new issues, your back issues, your toys, your games, your bags, your boards, your Pokemon cards, whatever it is you choose to buy at the shop. You'll start saving money while enjoying your hobby. Larry has a huge catalog of back issues. So if you're wanting to get maybe 8 Billion Genies, maybe you missed out on that, he's got some of those in the back issue run. If you're looking to divest yourself of your collection, maybe it's time, maybe you've got just too much, you don't know where it's going to go, maybe your ungrateful children don't deserve your collection and you want to sell it and spend that money now, go see Larry at Bugs Comics and Games. He'll give you a very fair price for your comics. The bonus is I will then get to go look through the back issues when he gets those laid out in the store, and it's a win-win-win all around. You can check him out on Facebook at Bugs Comics and Games. Make sure you give the page a like while you're there, and of course he is on Instagram, Bugs Comics and A&D Games. He'll put stuff up there if your local comic book store, wherever you're located, maybe you're in Chicago like Ryan, or maybe you're on the East or West Coast and your comic book store closed down, Bugs Comics and be your local comic book store online. Look up the stuff he has on Instagram. Say, hey, I want that. Send him a message. He sends you a PayPal invoice. You pay it. He ships the stuff right to your door. Easy peasy. Check him out again, Facebook and Instagram, Bugs Comics and Games. Make sure you go visit him if you're in the area on Bryan Road in O'Fallon, Missouri. Very proud to have them as the official sponsor here on Geek to Me Radio. Joined now by Charles Soule and Ryan Browne. We're still talking about the Lucky Devils. I was curious, there's a lot of great duos in comics. You think of Perez and Wolfman. You've got people like Marshall Rogers and Steve Englehart. How did the two of you first start collaborating? Do you remember when was it you just met and you decided, hey, let's do a book? Talk a little bit about your origin story as a duo.
Yeah, well, so, you know, with every collaboration, especially when you're working professionally, it's not just knowing something you want to work with, it's eventually having your schedules line up. So Charles and I knew each other. We had met through a mutual friend in comics at a comic show. And then we had slowly realized that we were both, Charles's wife is from the same hometown that I was from. And so we learned that we had this Michigan connection. And so then we started just kind of talking more. And I read some of Charles's books. He read some of my books. And then we became friends, and we continued to hang out and, you know, get drinks at comic shows and stuff. And just over time, we talked about working together. But, you know, I was doing a book called God Hates Astronauts for Image. And Charles was, you know, writing a million different books for DC at the time. And so, you know, it took a while. And then eventually I did a short for Charles was doing a Swamp Thing annual, I think it was. Was it an annual? And so I did a 2-pager with Charles. That was our first collaboration. It was about Swamp Thing wants to see the movies. So he goes through the plant matter of a popcorn kernel and grows in the movie theater. And so that Swamp Thing becomes a little popcorn thing, then we can watch a movie. And that was the first thing we did together. And so then, like, that went well enough, and we enjoyed each other's company, and we enjoyed spitballing and coming up with ideas so much that eventually, when I was ending God Hates Astronauts at Image, it was like, all right, you know, with any sort of freelance job, especially as an artist, I can really only be doing one thing at a time. And so it's very important to choose the right job. And so we started pushing around, you know, Charles and I, like, what would be fun for me to draw? And that's when we started coming up with the ideas for Curse Words, which was a series we did for almost 4 years at Image Comics.
You know, when I think about those early days, like the pre-Curse Words years, because we knew each other probably for 4 or 5 years before we actually did anything substantial, right? We did that little short Swamp Thing story and so on. But we became really good friends well before we did anything significant as creators. And I think that's really the foundation of what we do, because like Ryan and I hang out a lot outside of, you know, the actual creative work that we do. And I don't want to speak for Ryan, but I think we enjoy each other's company quite a bit. When we were doing that series Curse Words, we decided to do something unique to promote it, which was, you know, I don't know, maybe it was dumb in retrospect. It was a great time at the time. We rented a van and we painted the whole van all around with Ryan's art for the comic. It was this book, Curse Words, which was about an evil wizard who comes to New York City and tells everybody he's a good wizard so they'll like him, because he's kind of lonely because he's an evil wizard. Nobody likes evil wizards. So he's like, actually, I'm a good one. So he tells everybody that he's not actually a good wizard, and it goes south. But it's a fun book, and we had kind of just started making it. And so we rented this van and we drove all around the country for a month, and we visited comic shops everywhere. It was fun because we promoted it on social media, which was still good back then. And like, we'd be driving on the highway and people would honk at us in their cars next to us because they knew what the van meant. And like, I don't know, it was a great time. But we spent a month on the road together, staying in hotels, you know, sitting in the van, trying to figure out things to talk to on day 22. And it worked, right? Like we didn't become people who never wanted to talk to each other again after that van tour, which is kind of astonishing. And it's really those experiences that I think are the things that we take forward now. Like Ryan and I are friends first and creators second. And so when I think about making a new book with Ryan, I'm like, oh man, I get to do this cool thing with my friend. is really the primary part of it, more almost than what's the cool thing we're going to do. Because at this point, like, I know the cool stuff's going to come. Like we're in our groove, right? Like we know whatever we do is going to be a cool thing. So it's really like, how lucky am I that I get to work with one of my closest friends? It's like, I don't know. It's pretty great. It's really pretty great.
That sounds like it. And then a road trip in a van. Who wouldn't like that?
Well, plenty of people wouldn't like it. It's no picnic. You have to really want it. But it was a great time, man. We could tell you stories the whole rest of the time about the van tour, but but like you build this. I don't want to be cynical and say like you build a brand, because that's not really what it is. But from the beginning, Ryan and I have always been, we'll go the extra mile to promote the stuff that we do. We'll do things that other people don't seem to do. And part of it is that we love it, right? It's never a product when we put something out. It's always the passion project that we want to spend 2, 3, 4 years working on. And I think, this is just my suspicion, but from the way people talk to us, they feel it. They know that we're putting everything we have into everything we do. Like everything is the A+++ version of our creative skills. Not that I don't put everything I have into, Daredevil or Star Wars or whatever, but like, there's just something about the alchemy that we can produce when we work together. And I think the fans and the readers feel it. So it's, it seems great. Lucky Devils is certainly the latest example of it. I don't know, Ryan, I'm very excited for this one. I think it's really, really a cool book. It's good stuff.
Were there any promotional stuff that you guys did or are doing for this one?
I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, so my days of traveling the country in a van are probably behind me.
Right.
Which it still would be fun. But we're working out some signings and stuff, and like in terms of like big spectacle, like it's all coming very, very fast. Like we're hard at work on the book, which is like a very full-time job and super fun. But we've been fortunate enough that like on issue 1 we have 19 different retailer variants. Wow. And so like that's great to like have all of these different outlets and stores that are like participating in it and like helping spread the word. And we've been doing a bunch of interviews, and so Ryan,
you're downplaying the big thing we did, which was so I don't know if listeners at home know how incredibly difficult it is for people to sell a comic book. Okay. It's almost impossible. The system of getting your comic book into a comic book store where people will read it and buy it and read it is Byzantine. Mm-hmm. The way that it works is you make a comic book. Hopefully you get a publisher who says they will print it for you. Then comic book shops all around the country get this gigantic catalog that they flip through. It's called previews. Yeah. They flip through it every month, and then they have to decide which comics in that, like, again, this is like a print, like it's like a phone book, right? And they have to decide which comics they want to read. And so you're competing with Wolverine and Captain America and Batman and Avengers and all the stuff, Spider-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all these characters that people have heard of for 50 years, right? And you're some new thing they've never heard of. And so it's all but impossible, right? And so you have to do that. And then you also have to try to convince human beings who are notoriously fickle to go to the shop to buy it on the day it's released. So there's all of this crazy stuff you have to do. It's very challenging. So one of the things we decided to do to try to take some of the guesswork out of that process for those shops is we sent a copy of Lucky Devils #1 to every single shop in the country. I guess there's a couple exceptions, but basically we sent that issue, the physical issue, not an email. We put it in the mail and sent it out because we wanted to make sure that these shops who have to decide they're going to spend their money to put it on their shelves knew what it was and knew what they were getting ahead of time. So not every book does that. Not every book can do that. We recognize that we're lucky that we have the ability to do that based on the success of some of the stuff we've done in the past. But, these books, like, they're all like indie bands. Every time you make an independent comic book, it's like you're putting out an indie record, and you have to convince people to listen to it, in this case, read it. And so you have to do everything you can. You have to be very creative to find a way to get people to dig in. And in this case, we thought the best way to do it in terms of phase one, right, which is actually getting shops to put it on the shelf, is to send it to them, to say, we believe in this enough that we're going to spend the dough. It was not cheap to get it out to every store. So we did that. And then tomorrow, right, it's Sunday, January 8th as we're recording this. December. Jesus. It's Sunday, December 8th as we're recording this. And Monday, December 9th is when those stores have to place their orders. So it's a very nerve-wracking 24 hours for us, because we're going to find out tomorrow if all of this work and all of this effort that we've done, all of these interviews like we're doing with you tonight, if they actually did anything. And we're hopeful. But it comes down to one day. It's very dramatic. It's a very intense situation.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, the way you describe it, because I figured, and again, to use your word, Charles, you said you kind of have a brand. You both are already established. People know your work. So I would think it gets a little easier with each project, or am I mistaken?
You're not wrong, right? There's certainly something to be said for the fact that we've been in this business for a long time, for many years, and people know us, and we have relationships with some of the people who own those stores and big accounts. Like we can email people, call people, text people at this point in a way that we couldn't have done it when we were just starting out.
Right.
But if there's a more pragmatic, that's the word I'm going to use, a more pragmatic bunch than comic shop owners in terms of the money they spend, I don't know what it would be. And that's understandable and great and good, because, the business, the margins on these comics are razor thin. Yeah. And so if you invest a lot in a comic that nobody wants and nobody buys, and people come into your store and it just sits there on the shelf, too many of those and your doors close. It's just the reality of it. As many stores close, as many stores open every month, right? For every store that opens, another store's closing. So anybody who's been in the business for a long time has seen a lot of creators come and go, a lot of cool books come and go. And so the trick really for us is establishing trust and saying, we have your back. This is we're all in this together situation, a rising tide floats all boats kind of deal. And as I mentioned earlier, sending out that issue was a vote of confidence in our own book. And also it gives them a way to, we wouldn't do that if we weren't serious about this. This is not Ryan and Charles half-assing something, coasting on the success of 8 Billion Genies, right? This is us going full on with the next book. And we'll see what happens tomorrow, man. This is a wild night. But fingers crossed, it's exciting times.
So it almost feels like the night before, if you're an actor, you're going to get the Oscar nomination or not. You're finding out tomorrow morning how this all went.
Well, I think it's more like, did we invest a bunch of money that we're not going to see back, or are we going to have difficult conversations with the family and our children? But now, we'll see.
This might be getting too deep in the weeds, and so if you're listening, and I just pulled up my phone, so I'm able to see your chats on the phone. So hello to Shannon right here in St. Louis. Chance is listening from Atlanta, Georgia. So nice. I'm trying to keep up on the East. So thank you to all of you who are listening right now. I'm trying to keep a focus on 3 different things. So, but I want let's say people miss the first issue, but let's say word gets out and the comic book stores come around and start ordering more on issue 4 and issue 5. Is that still helpful, or do you want that right out of the gate? Do you want that first issue to hit and then it's kind of less relevant the farther the series goes?
I mean, I've been talking a lot, Ryan. Go for it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, strange process because the reason why comics are monthly in issues is because it costs less to produce a single issue than it would be a trade all at once. And so you're basically, with the issues coming out, you're seeing do people like this? And you're getting small doses of it. And thankfully, there is the ability to reprint stuff. And so there are different arcs for certain books. There's books that come out and do huge number ones. People are so excited because they think it's going to be so valuable. And then nobody reads issue 2 because all they wanted was to collect issue 1. Right. But then there's other books where issue 1's modest, and then it kind of gets some word of mouth, and issue 1's sold out, and so they need to reprint, and they'll try and do a reprint of issue 1 that comes out the same week as issue 2, and so it's always kind of like a shifting thing. You always want to start as high as humanly possible because your issue 1 is going to sell way more than any other issue.
Right.
And so that's when you want to put in all your press and all your work. But again, like you're asking people to buy something they've never read, and have no idea if they can sell it. And comics are such a specialty store that, you know, your customers, if you have a good relationship with your customers, they will believe the store owners and the people that work there, their opinions on books. And so, you know, if you can connect with a store owner and you can show them your book, and then if they like it, then it's easier for them to sell to people. You have to give them a reason to not just like order a couple extra copies of Batman with that same money, you know?
Right.
Like, and so if you can get the people that work in the stores to buy into your book, then they can hopefully easily, when they get their regular customers come in, they'll be like, hey, have you seen this new book? We read it. We got free copies in or whatever. And we read it and we really like it, or we don't like it at all. Don't buy it. You know, either way. But we, you know, we felt very confident that people were going to like what was happening in this first issue. And so we wanted to take as much risk out of that for these stores, and taking a chance on the book, not just based on our names, but by the actual content of the book. And so, yeah, so we'll find out. We'll find out tomorrow, like where we start, like where our starting point is. And hopefully it starts at a good, strong place so that we can really make sure that we do the series the way we want it to be done. You know, spend all the time. You know, we frequently are doing issues that are oversized, that have too many pages, have more pages than they're supposed to have for the price point.
Come on, Ryan. But no such
yeah.
thing.
Well,
No
too many in terms of like we're not charging anymore for the book, but
well, that's a good
story
point.
pages,
Yeah.
which means you know. So in that sense, we're not just like filling the back of every issue with ads, you know. And so like if it's successful off the bat, that gives us a really good you know, financial runway to like spend the time and energy on the book to make it exactly what we want it to be.
That's right.
And if it makes you feel any better, I know I went into my local comic book shop, Bugs Comics, the ones I just talked about on Wednesday. And I told Larry, I said, I'm going to have Charles and Ryan on. He goes, oh, are you going to be talking about Lucky Devils? So you must have sent him a copy. Because I said, yeah, could you add it to my pull list? He goes, I love the book. I thought it was great. I've already ordered some. So your process is working. Just to give you that little bit of, if that helps
I mean, that's
at all,
great news.
feedback.
We'll take that as that single sample as the hopefully the bellwether for what's happening across the country. I mean, you know, we're in a very fortunate position, and I'm not going to pretend we're not, right? We're coming off a book that 8 Billion Genies, the one we've talked about a little bit in this conversation, that was really really well received. It seemed to like really, you know, connect with people in a way that comics, even hit comics, don't always do. It seemed to touch something in people that, you know, when you're making creative work, which Ryan and I do for a living, like it's what we do day in and day out. All we do is create things. And the sort of the flip side of the coin of creating things is connecting with people. And like, it's almost more than money, almost more than whatever little fame being in comics can get you. I think connecting with people, when people come up to us at conventions and talk about how the way that our stories have affected them, like that's the thing, you know? And so 8 Billion Genies was that book for many, many, many people. And it has enabled us to do things like this thing we mentioned earlier about sending a copy to every store in the country. We're able to do that because the book was successful. And it also built sort of like a credit account, almost you could say, or a line of credit in terms of goodwill with respect to how people see our projects. And that's readers, and that's comic shop owners, and so on and so forth. And so we are very hopeful that all of that investment will turn into an audience for the next one. Because if realistically, like this is our third major project together, it's Curse Words, 8 Billion Genies, and Lucky Devils. And if Lucky Devils goes well, and let me preface that by saying, like, the book's going to be, like, we are very confident in the story we're telling. The book's going to be great regardless. Okay. But if people connect with it, even half of the people who connect with Genies connect with Devils, like, it enables us to be people who create our own things essentially forever.
Yeah.
Which is the goal. You know, Ryan and I think there's always going to be some level of audience for what we do. We know we have fans out there, but there's a level of fandom that you can reach sometimes as a creative duo, just like a band. Think of like a rock band, right? Like there's a point where a rock band becomes sort of undeniable and they can just put out records for the rest of their lives and people will buy them. They can go on tour and things can happen for them and they can just be creative the way they want for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying Devils is the make or break project for us being able to do that, but it's not that. And so I don't know. I'm really, really hopeful. I think we're talking about topics here that people will be really interested in. I think people care about the way the world is. Like one of the big sort of sub themes of the Lucky Devils is, you know, why is it so hard to visualize a truly good person? I mean, that's literally the question that the book begins with. Like you can think of a truly bad person pretty easily. And you can probably like make a list of really bad people without any effort. But when you think of like really truly good through and through people who never hurt anyone and are completely selfless, like through history, that list is like infinitesimal. It's tiny. And there's got to be a reason for that, right? Yeah. You know, are we bad? Are we born bad? I don't think so. I think something happens to us. And this book tries to examine that question, which is pretty universal. So I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff in it. It's also super fun. It's not just like a bunch of moral, you know, annoying morality stuff. It's also like Ryan's incredible drawings of little devils being real jerks to cool people. And it's really, really, really fun. I think I don't know. I just can't, like, we're in this weird limbo phase where we know what the book is. We know that it's great. We're very proud of it, but almost nobody's read it. Like those shop owners, sure. But it's not really going to be in people's hands until January. And man, I just want it to be out there. I want to hear that reaction from people, even if they don't like it. I just want to know. So this is you're catching us at kind of a tough spot. Yeah. But we're glad to talk about it.
And if you're just now tuning in, again, we're talking with Charles Soule and Ryan Browne about their book, The Lucky Devils, from Image Comics, on sale the first week of January. Make sure to check it out. We're going to take one very quick last commercial break here. We're going to come right back. We'll chat a little bit more. I've got some other questions unrelated to Lucky Devils, but I'm liking this topic so much, I don't know if we'll get to them. We'll see how it goes. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
Heroes stop them. They're on the move and ready for action. Rocks and bugs and things from Ideal. Throughout time, people have asked, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Maybe it was a Manglore, like Manglore Demon. You can pretend to hatch Manglore Dragon and Manglizard, too. Each sold separately in a make-believe egg. You can stretch them, squash them, take them apart. They'll return almost like new to their original forms. So if you want to hatch up some fun, you can crack open a Manglore. The Manglores, Manglore Demon, Manglore Dragon, and Manglizard, each sold separately from Ideal.
Airlandia, the Air Raiders command post prepares for the Tyrant's Dragonwind attack. Hit it with everything we've got! Thunderclaw, launch! Remote missiles, flare! Hold on to your helmets, men!
Launch glider! Fire! Good shot! Launch claw! Launch storm dagger! Against the Tyrants win! Their army's at the command post! Rock slide!
Air Raiders command post and claw and Tyrant's Dragonwind, each complete with figures.
Bad scientist!
I've done it! It's dissect an alien, and it's...
Gross!
You take his insides out and put them back in. Too gross.
Yuck!
That's disgusting.
He's a real slime bucket.
Yuck!
Dissect an alien. Watch for time freaks and more gross creations so you too can be a mad scientist. Too gross.
Earth's first line of defense has a breakthrough in space technology. Magnalock.
You listen to Phil Morris, or Jackie Childs, as the case may be, and you listen to Geek to Me Radio. Tune in, tune on, and turn on, baby, because I'll be right here.
There we go. Philip Morris will be the next person joining us on the Justice League Revisited podcast. If you're a Justice League fan, you might want to check that out. It's myself and the voice of Wonder Woman, Susan Eisenberg. We voiced the Justice League Revisited. We have a guest on like Phil Morris or Phil Lamar or George Newbern or Dan Reba, and we watch an episode and then we break it down and talk about it. So if you're a fan of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and who isn't, make sure you check out Justice League Revisited, the podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. I want to make sure we tell you about our premier sponsor, the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. You know them from the website discoverstcharles.com. They're right in the middle of their big Christmas Traditions Festival. It's the longest running and largest Christmas festival in the country. They're going to be featured on the Today Show this coming Friday. They've been judged the merriest Main Street in America. They've got all the cobblestone streets, the buildings that date back, some of them to the late 1700s. They've got 3.5 miles of greenery that's strung up all over the light posts. They've got 1,500 bows. They've got, during the festival, people dressed in Victorian garb singing period-appropriate carols. They've got people you can interact with like Sugar Plum Fairy and Jack Frost. You can get your picture taken with Santa in the old train depot down in Katy Trail right there on the train tracks. It's a fantastic, and it snowed the first weekend. It's nothing. It's like a Hallmark movie that you stepped into. So if you're tired of the hustle and bustle of the malls, make sure you spend your Christmas at Christmas Traditions in St. Charles. You can check out their website, discoverstcharles.com, for more information. Click the events tab, and you'll be able to see all the stuff that goes on, the dates. They've got special after-hours events as well, so you can check out those and see what's going on. And when it's not Christmas, there's a lot of other stuff going on. They have food truck days, ice sculpting events in January. They've got a new Valentine's Festival they're kicking off last year that's going to be coming back this year. And it's all made up of small businesses. This entire area is made up of small businesses, restaurants, shops, stores, and places that you won't see anywhere else. So it's in this economy, it's more important than ever to support small businesses. So make sure you check it out. If you're in the area, drive on over there and see what's going on. If you're from out of town, put it on your bucket list for 2025. Make sure you check it out. DiscoverStCharles.com. Start your trip there at the website, DiscoverStCharles.com. As we always say, it's an historically good time. Chatting here for just a little bit longer. This hour has flown by, talking with Charles Soule and Ryan Browne about the Lucky Devils. You guys were talking about 8 Billion Genies, and I saw the blurb that the movie's coming. Do you have a moment to talk about that?
Absolutely. So when 8 Billion Genies came out, we were very fortunate to have a lot of interest from Hollywood studios and producers. We had like 27 of them who reached out and wanted to potentially make 8 Billion Genies into a TV show or film. And after a intense process of being pitched basically by all those people, who did we go with, Ryan?
Amazon Studios.
Nice.
So we had it took over a month of negotiating with all these different moving parts and different places and different studios and production companies, and so we chose Amazon, and they've been totally wonderful through the whole process. But their plan is they're working on it as a feature film, live action with with little CGI genies. And they signed a production deal with Point Grey, which is Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg's company. They do The Boys and they do Invincible, and they're basically attaching themselves to all of the good comic properties, in media right now. It's awesome. But they do such great, and they did the Ninja Turtles movie this summer, The Mutant Mayhem. So we're like in very good hands. And then it's being written by Rodney Rothman, who wrote Into the Spider-Verse. He also directed part of Into the Spider-Verse. And he wrote like 22 Jump Street, and he was a head writer for Letterman for a while. Like he's legit, and he's very accomplished. So it's just been a really thrilling experience, seeing how much the book means to people, and then seeing how much the people in Hollywood have like, oh, we could see the universe you could build out from this concept, because you just have like every single person has their own story, because every person has what they would wish for and what that wish says about them, and it's just a great way to tell stories about people. It's kind of like The Walking Dead, or like Lost, or any of these high concept things that build a framework that is really good to tell human stories within. And so we're very happy that we figured out that route to telling that story versus it just being nothing but silly wishes. And we think that Amazon is going to follow suit and like follow the vision we had set up for that.
Which leads to my next question. I'm very curious because sometimes you'll see comic book properties adapted and they're not always, it depends. Sometimes they're very faithful to the source material. The Walking Dead kind of veered around a little bit. One of my favorite characters, Carol, was not in the original comic books, but we love Carol nonetheless. How was there anything, and if you guys can't speak to this, that's fine. I know there's legalities involved. How strict were you guys say, hey, we really want this to follow the story, or did once they take it over, we say we trust you'll do the right thing with it? Where was that line for the two of you?
You know, in a lot of the conversations we had, it was really, we understood the universality of the premise, right? Everybody, just as Ryan just said, everybody on Earth has a wish. Everybody on Earth has a genie. Everybody on Earth has a story. And so an adaptation could follow a totally different group of people or different individuals with their wishes and how they go through this wishpocalypse, as we call it, and see what happened to them instead. And so really what we want, what Ryan and I want, I believe, is an adaptation that is true to the spirit of the book more than necessarily true to the literal events of the book, because the premise can be done in literally 8 billion different ways. And for us, you know, we think we came up with some really good ideas and really good execution. Ryan's genie designs. I mean, I think if I were to say, like, here's my list of things that I really don't want them to mess with, number one is Ryan's genie designs. I want them to look like that and feel like that, but maybe a little tweaky for, you know, adapting for the live action milieu, but basically Ryan's designs. And then I would really like it if it kept the rule structure that we built in terms of how the genies work, what they want, how they operate, how they grant wishes. You know, it would be weird if everybody got 3 wishes, for example. Part of the thing that's really baked into the concept is that everybody gets 1 wish, not 3.
Right.
And how that makes people strategic and how that makes people think about it. And then the other thing would really just be the thoughtfulness that Ryan and I brought to executing 8 Billion Genies. We would like to see, you know, whatever premise they go with, whatever version of the premise they go with, that level of thoughtfulness would be ideal. But, you know, the reality is when you sign that contract, you give up creative control to a large degree. Like, Ryan and I are involved. They talk to us. We have input. We can give notes, but they paid us the money, which means we step away.
Okay.
And that's just how it is. Fortunately, the people that are involved, both the Amazon executive types, obviously Seth and Evan at Point Grey, and Rodney, are all really, really heavy hitter creative people whose vision we believe in and trust. So it's, you know, we should be seeing a fair amount more very soon, I think, in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And fingers crossed it all makes us happy. But even if it doesn't, if they make a movie, we'll still be very happy. Let's put it that way.
I'm curious, that kind of begs the question of, let's say Lucky Devils also gets optioned. When I read, I obviously hear certain voices. Anytime I read a Batman comic, it's Kevin Conroy's voice, for example. Do you have in your mind, if it's an animated adaptation of the Lucky Devils, who would voice the Devils? Do you already have something like you're hearing voices in your head for when you're writing it, or in your case, Ryan, when you're drawing it?
Oh, that's interesting. I've never asked you that about your characters. When I'm drawing characters, I almost always have some sort of touchstone that I'm going back to, be it an act. A lot of times it's an actor in a specific role in a movie that I you know, I'm not pulling up photo reference, but I'm like remembering how that person moved, you know, what the body language was like, you know, and like a general look for them. So I always start with something that just is, you know, something I can recall easily without having to like do a bunch of research, and it keeps me on model so that my characters kind of look consistent throughout it. So like in Lucky Devils, the two main devils, Collar and Rake. Collar is Popeye, and Rake is Willem Dafoe, and like a snarling Willem Dafoe. And
so that's who we want to cast in the movie, is Popeye.
Yeah,
and
so
Willem
those
Dafoe.
are the 2 that I found like visually, like, you know,
yeah.
he's, you know, Collar's got the, you the big jaw, the kind of Popeye thing, and then Rake's got these crazy eyes and like a snarl, and so for that, for me, it's like that's what I think of. But I never think about what their voices sound like. Like if you said who would play the voice of the genies in 8 Billion Genies, I have no idea.
Seth Rogen, probably. But I mean, for me, I would say Collar is somebody like like a Tom Hardy, like sort of a real like tough guy kind of, like possibly with a British accent. And then for Rake, somebody like maybe like Emma Stone, I think could work really well. But at the same time, we don't, at this point, these are not decisions that we get to make. And that would be, man, if something like that were to happen, it would be such a thrill. But really, we are focused on the comic because that's all that we can get our arms around.
Right.
And there's a long road between either Genies or Lucky Devils becoming something more than just the comics. And so Ryan and I are in charge. We're comics people, and we try to make the best comics we can. And anything else that happens is kind of gravy.
And I have pages of things I wanted to ask you both about here, but as normal, I don't get to it because the conversation just kind of flows. We've got a little under a minute. I want to make sure we allow people to find out where to find you both at online if they want to keep up with you. We'll start with Ryan.
Yeah, I actually set up a little link tree at theluckydevils.comic.com, and you can find links to Charles and I on Instagram and Blue Sky. Charles has a web store where we sell 8 Billion Genie stuff and some of the other creator-owned stuff that both of us have done. And yeah, that's the best way to find us. Charles, anything?
Yeah, I mean, we're both on the various social media platforms, Instagram. So Ryan is generally speaking Ryan Browne Art. And I am Charles Soule on Instagram. I'm Charles D. Soule. And then my website is charlessoule.com. And Ryan's is godhatesastronauts.com. But it's, we're around. Like, just Google us. Yeah, you'll find us very quickly.
And we'll put links to those because I know I got the wrong Ryan Browne site earlier when I was looking stuff up, so I apologize for that. But we'll put the correct site.
No worries.
We'll put some links in the show notes. If you're listening to this after the fact, check out the show notes at the bottom of the page. We'll have links to both of theirs. And make sure you ask your local comic book store tomorrow. Call them. Tell them to order the Lucky Devils. Charles Soule, Ryan Browne, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. I need to have you back on again because I got a bunch of stuff we didn't get to. So hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Anytime. Thanks so much.
That'd be great.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank
Take
you
care.
so much.
And make sure if you're listening right now, make sure you check out 2 RiversComicCon.com, a brand new Comic Con coming here to St. Louis in May. We've got Mark Bagley, we've got Phil Lamar, we've got Maria Canals-Burr, we've got Roy Thomas coming. So make sure you check out, get your tickets. They're available now. Until next week, my friends.
This is Geek to Me Radio. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio.
Thank you, Planet Earth. Good night.
The Big 550 KTRS